Buonasera, we are at day 13 of our wine quarantine. Today I'm not going to be tasting wine, but I want to introduce you to a wonderful area of Italy, which I'm sure everybody's familiar with, known as Chianti Classico. When we refer to the Chianti Classico, we know we are in Florence would be to the north, Siena would be to the south, and in between there is this beautiful area with a lot of different hillsides that we call Chianti Classico. Again, when we look at the geography, most importantly here we find the Chianti Mountains, which are really low elevation mountains, more like higher elevation hillsides, but also there's a variety of other hill ranges that run north to south, but also east to west, creating a very unique, very different environment for the vine to thrive. With that, also we have several river courses, which are very important. Most important be the Arno River right here, but also we have the Greve and the Pesa rivers, which also give names to, the villages of the Chianti Classico. Now, with that being said, the main soil types we find in Chianti Classico are two. To the north would be the Galestro, which is basically the schistous, rocky, crumbly type of marine soil. And then to the south, we find Alberese, which is more based on sandstone, more rocky, harder, drier type of soils. Again, this is a gross generalization because throughout Chianti Classico there's an incredible variety of soils that really produce incredible amount of different wines. Now, when we think about Chianti, we have to step back in time a little bit. We're going back first to the 13th century because way back then the wines produced in this area were white wines. So there wasn't a culture or viticulture of red wines yet. Although in the 14th century is when we start seeing the first in documentation, the name Chianti tied to the so-called Lega del Chianti. Lega del Chianti was a military organization controlled by Florence to protect the southern boundaries, which basically controlled the territories of Castellina in Chianti, Gaiolo in Chianti, and Radda in Chianti. Now, the very important moment, the very important year in history of the area known as Chianti, still way back then, was 1716, when Grand Duke Cosimo dei Medici III, of the famous Medici family, he basically creates the first legislation that recognizes production of wines within the territories of the Lega del Chianti, plus the territories of Greve and Panzano. So these are the first legislated wine production in the world, 1716, right? Now, during these times, though, Sangiovese did not really play the major role in the production of these wines, but rather was Canaiolo, until a new historical figure comes into play, his name being Bettino Ricasoli. Bettino Ricasoli will also become the second prime minister of Italy in 1861 after the unification of Italy. Bettino Ricasoli was extremely important history of Chianti because he crafted the so-called Chianti recipe. After many years of studies and research, he realized that Sangiovese was the key grape. It was the most important grape, the one that could give you wines, high quality, great ageability, and beautiful, beautiful flavors. And that's why Sangiovese was 70% of such recipe, 15% was Canaiolo, and 15% was Malvasia Bianca, so also white grape blended in. Now, fast forwarding 1927, basically, these five villages that we just mentioned, the territory is expanded, where basically now includes also San Casciano Val di Pesa, Tavernelle, Poggi Bonzi, and other territories to become what practically it is today, the Chianti Classico area. 1932, as the wines become very popular, the wines are starting to be exported throughout Europe and whatnot, the Italian governor's brilliant idea said, let's expand the Chianti boundaries. As a matter of fact, this Chianti Classico, the Chianti generic Chianti DOCG covers pretty much half of Tuscany, so the area increases immensely, too big, right? But that being said, they will continue to be for several years. 1967, Chianti wines become DOC. 1984, Chianti wines become now DOCG, and it won't be until 1996 that basically the two areas, the Chianti Classico, which we see here, and the large Chianti area that surrounds it with the various subzones, eventually are separated. What does that mean? That in Chianti Classico you have your own set of rules you have to follow for the production of wines that implies a certain amount of Sangiovese, a certain amount of aging, yield per hectare, and all these boring facts. But also in the Chianti, the larger Chianti, you have your own set of rules, which are maybe not as strict as in Chianti Classico, so that also gives you an indication of what the wines are going to be. Now, 1996, as I mentioned, Chianti Classico becomes independent, and another very important year is 2006, 10 years later, when basically white grapes are no longer permitted in the Chianti Classico wines. Lastly, the other step that takes place eventually is 2013. 2013 is the inception of so-called Gran Selezione. So basically, when you look at Chianti Classico, it's like a pyramid. That you have Chianti Classico Annata, which is the vintage Chianti Classico, then you have Riserva, and then you have Gran Selezione. So practically, that tells you that when you drink a glass of Chianti Classico, it can be an incredible diversity, not only on terroir, on soils, and different elevation exposures, whatnot, and producers, but also the system that exists. So today I wanted to show you a couple of labels. Maybe another time we'll do a tasting also to make it more interesting, but today just show you a couple of labels. One being the one I mentioned by Bettino Ricasoli called Broglio, the famous castle owned by the Ricasoli family, where this historical Chianti goes back since the 1800s. Then we have a Nozzole by La Forra. This is an expression of a Chianti Classico Riserva single vineyard. And lastly, this would be the Gran Selezione, which is the newest inception by Castello di Querceto called Il Picchio. Practically implies that the wines are aged longer, lower, smaller production, and a variety of facts that come into play. And lastly, it's important to understand, actually I'll leave you with a question. If you can tell me which is the first Chianti Classico that was ever imported in the United States. Okay? With that being said, I will leave you. I will see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful Saturday evening. Be healthy. In alto i cuori. Ciao!